All right, so we are back again, talking about nutrition as well as hydration, and the importance of this other sort of really important aspect of um, just keeping our bodies fit and healthy, and operating at their highest level possible, right? So what I would say is that nutrition means building a strong, resilient body. There's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of examples. There's a whole bunch of different diets. There's a lot of different things out there, right? But essentially, what it comes down to is, you are what you eat is a common saying. So you play how you fuel, right? The most common analogy, obviously, that could be given is, if you take a Ferrari and you put into it, just sort of your regular gasoline that you would put into like a lawnmower or something like that, it's not going to perform as a Ferrari would perform, right? You have to put that premium, high level, high octane type of fuel in it in order to sort of get what you paid for, really, right? To sort of get the results that you're looking for. So this is very similar when we start talking about how we perform, having a strong body, a resilient body, and then what we put into our body as fuel in order to have the best production possible. So food is fuel, and proper nutrition supports the development of strong muscles, bones, and connective tissues. What we mean by connective tissues are, tendons and ligaments and fascia and all that kind of stuff, right? So poor nutrition could be actually defined in two kind of very important ways. One is you're just not getting enough calories, right? So again, let's say typically you should be having, 2,000 calories a day. Again, I'm just coming up with numbers here, but let's say you're supposed to have 2,000 calories a day, but you're really only eating about 1,500, right? Not only is that not good for you as a person, but if we're talking about from an athletic perspective, that is very insufficient in terms of the calories that you need. The other definition of a poor nutrition is missing key nutrients, right? So you're not getting the macronutrients that you need in terms of carbs, fats, and proteins, or you are missing the micronutrients. So again, you could see some here: calcium, vitamin D, um, you know, potassium, sodium, electrolytes. These other sorts of things are really important for our body to function. So again, there's a few different ways of thinking about poor nutrition. But what we know is that if you are in either of these camps or even both of these camps, it will lead to a weakened body or a insufficient or really non-resilient body, right? So a few examples, one of them is insufficient calcium and vitamin D impairs bone strength, which could lead to not only stress fractures, but fractures in general, right? And this is obviously not something that we want, right? So if we could have an improved calcium and vitamin D sort of nutrient intake in our body, this is one of the simple things that can help improve to strengthen us, right? And what we know too is that a stronger bones lead to stronger muscles as well. So reduced protein intake leads to ineffective muscle repair and growth. We've talked about impaired repair and growth of the body through inadequate sleep. Same idea with nutrition, right? If you are not fueling yourself to the level that you should be in terms of your level of protein intake, then this could lead to ineffective muscle repair and growth. And typically, what we think about when we think of protein intake, we like to think about around 2 grams of protein for those athletes out there, those that are really physically active. A little bit lower for non-athletes, so maybe around 1 to 1.2 or so. But ideally for athletes, we want to try to get 2 grams per pound of body weight, as best as possible. So the other thing is hydration that we talked about, right? So hydration, and again, this is one of those things that we don't really think a whole lot about, but it actually really adds up to something super important, which is hydration plays a big role in performance and injury prevention. Dehydration is the most common one out there. We could talk a little bit about overhydration, but When you are dehydrated, so typically when we talk about that, it's when you lose about 2% of your body weight, and that's typically through sweating, which again, as an athlete, you're going to do that a lot, actually. So, especially, for football, you got a lot of pads on, or, a lot of other sports, you have equipment and whatnot. So sweat is a very, very common component, right, of athletics. So this is going to reduce your strength, your power, and your endurance by about 5%. And again, that may not seem like a lot, but a 5% reduction in these sorts of things means you're not sprinting as fast, you're not jumping as high. Your muscles are contracting at a slightly weaker sort of force capacity than they would normally, right? So that 5% difference, again, could be the difference between, you know, um, blocking the shot or not. It could be the difference between running past someone or not. So, there's these fine margins in athletics where, if you're not hydrated enough and your body's not, again, optimized to its highest extent possible, that could lead to poor performance and then poor outcomes, right? So, again, something to be really, really mindful of. Dehydration, so that's from a more performance perspective. From an injury prevention perspective, dehydration puts you at risk of injury because muscles, tendons, ligaments, they're going to be less pliable. And when something is actually less pliable, it means that it's more brittle, and it means that it's more prone to cramping and strains, tears, injuries, things of this sort, right? So again, we want to stay supple, we want to stay pliable, we want to stay flexible. These are all really, really important, and being hydrated lends itself to that. And a really scary statistic that I came across, unfortunately, is that a study found that 66% of NCAA Division One athletes, they showed up to practice already in a dehydrated state. So, if you show up to practice like that, you could drink as much water as you want, but by the time that water gets through the body, gets to everything it needs to, practice is going to be over, right? Or the game is going to be over. So that dehydrated state is going to persist through the course of your athletic activities, right? So this is really, really important. And what that means is that it takes us to our tips, right? So one of them is a colorful plate, okay? In order for us to get the degree and the range of nutrients that we need, we have to have various different types of food groups, right? So again, I'm not a nutritionist by any stretch of the imagination, but a colorful plate means that, you know, you're having green stuff, right? So you're getting broccoli, vegetables, things of this sort. You have other sort of colors, right? Your reds, have an apple or something, right? These sorts of varieties. When you look at your plate, it shouldn't just be like pasta, French fries, bread, carbohydrates, right? Have a colorful plate. Try to maximize that to the best that you can, right? Pre-activity snack, post-activity snack, and meal. We tend to be very dehydrated and underfueled before we even enter an activity, right? And in order for us to have adequate recovery, we need to then have a post-activity snack or meal. So if you're coming into a game or an activity on a completely empty stomach, it's probably not the best idea, because then it's probably going to lead to, again, risk of injury, right? Your body's not going to be able to perform. It's like driving a car across country, um, or in your case, to like Ohio, in a car that's on E, right? It's probably not going to function very well. You may be fine at the beginning, but you're going to really struggle towards the middle and end of whatever activity you're performing. And again, recovery. After we exercise, after we perform athletically, our body sort of breaks down a little bit, right? So we need to recover in order to build back that muscle repair and growth that we sort of injured during our activity. Again, hydration, really, really important. What I would say is not just before, as in like 10, 15, 20 minutes before an activity, but 2 or 3 hours before an activity, you should be hydrating, okay? We need time for this hydration to get in through the body, in through the muscles, the ligaments, the tendons, the bones even, right? We need that process in order to sort of be hydrated for whatever we need to. And I think we all sort of intuitively know this, is that look at your pee. use that as a mechanism of kind of where am I in relation to am I hydrated or not? And we're going to, talk about that in a second. Lastly, I would say, especially for the athletes out there, do not rely on thirst. That's a very common sort of saying out there or idea out there right now, and that's okay if you are, if you are just sort of going about your normal day, you're not doing anything drastically, physically active or anything of that sort. But by the time you are really thirsty, by the time you get to that thirst state, that means you're already in a dehydrated state, right? That means that you're already lacking the hydration that you would need anyway. So we need to be very careful about relying on thirst to help guide our hydration and when to drink. So that would be a real big point that I would make sure to emphasize with you all is again, really focus on that 2 or 3 hours before you exercise hydration plan, okay? And then this is always a fun thing to look at here, but again, your urine color. What does your pee look like? Now, I think we all know, again, if you are in this kind of red orange zone, that is like not a very good place to be in, right? If you urinate and it is darker in color, that is not good. We are not hydrated enough. But on the other hand, if you urinate and and it's essentially clear, you may be overhydrated. And what that means is that you're diluting your sodium, potassium, your electrolytes in your body. And we need that to function. We need that sodium, potassium. We need it for muscle contraction, for nerve conduction signaling. So that all that stuff is really, really important. So again, we want to look into that sort of light-ish yellow sort of area there in the good to sort of fair range. Everything else is kind of like not really good. So that's kind of my take on it. Again, make sure you have adequate nutrition, make sure you have high quality nutrition, and then make sure you're hydrated. Again, not only are these important for injury reduction, but then also for performance. So again, thank you very much. Please reach out if you have any questions. And I hope you have, again, a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.